Hello, great minds out there. Welcome to another episode of my learning moments. Today, we will learn the different factors that impact student learning outcomes in tertiary education system. My sharing with you today will be anchored on this study entitled Factors Affecting the Quality of Learning Outcome in a Higher Education Institution by Rashida G. Gabdrakhmanova et al. This study explores the relationship between student university academic outcomes and the quality of school education they receive before entering university. Another study in which I anchored my sharing with you is a review on outcome-based education and factors that impact student outcomes in tertiary education by Hafiz Muhammad Asim et al. The basic aim of this review was to evaluate effectiveness of outcome-based education and important factors that could impact student learning outcome. The review highlighted several factors and the significance of the part of education in formulating the curriculum in education in such a way as to develop an environment for best possible learning, to provide encouragement to the learners, to gain knowledge from each other, and to give feedback throughout the journey. The first factor affecting student learning outcome in tertiary education is learning objectives on the basis of levels of complexity. In traditional education, the main emphasis remains at the cognitive domain and is commonly used to organize the learning objectives, assessment methods, and strategies. As you can see, the Bloom's taxonomy at the lowest level is remember for cognitive, for affective receiving, and for psychomotor imitation. In the cognitive level, the highest level is evaluate. In the affective level, the highest is characterization, while in the psychomotor domain, the highest level is naturalization. On the other hand, as you can see, there is a comparison between the old version and the new version of the Bloom's taxonomy. The new version is the revised Bloom's taxonomy. At the base of the pyramid, in the old version is knowledge, and in the new version is remembering. In the old version, the highest level is evaluation, while in the new version, it's creating. The second factor that affect student learning outcome in the tertiary education is assessment methods. Assessment methods are ways to ascertain or measure student achievement levels associated with the stated student learning outcomes. Outcome is a generic term for goals, objectives, and/or aims. Assessment can be categorized in a variety of numerous ways, and most of them are rational. One helpful classification of assessment is based on its categorization as a diagnostic, formative, or summative. An assessment method of students related to and prior to their exposure with a specific educational intervention is known as diagnostic. The purpose of this kind of assessment is to evaluate the educational needs of students with the main aim of maximizing the learning process. A profile is generated frequently to identify domains of strength and weaknesses. With the progression towards outcomes-based education, importance must be increased of such kinds of assessments. The formative type of assessment involves an assessment of learners during educational process. The objective behind this kind of assessment is twofold. First, they give feedback to learners as well as teachers, which are projected to guide learning. Secondly, the method of assessment itself generates learning. Therefore, formative assessment is a significant compound of education. The third type of assessment is known as summative assessment. It's usually conducted at the end or at the completion of period of time. This type of assessment is used to evaluate whether the student has learned what has been taught. As a result, these assessments are generally cumulative and identify whether the learner is competent to enter into professional practice. Now, what are the bases for selecting appropriate assessment methods? First, it is a common knowledge that everything that we do in the instruction as one of the functions of the university, we base our activities to the vision and mission of the university. Whatever activity we take, it should revolve around the attainment of the vision and mission. Another basis for selecting appropriate assessment method is the university student outcomes, the student learning outcomes, and then after this, we formulate our assessment methods. A specific assessment method is selected in such a way as a specific outcome. So, before creating an assessment method, you should be able to answer this question: how do I measure student learning outcomes? When selecting any assessment method, these are the questions that we take into consideration. First, that is fit with the student learning outcomes. Did the faculty or student services staff select the method and are they willing to participate in its use? So these are the questions that we need to take into consideration when selecting any assessment method. So we will continue. Another question that we need to take into consideration is this: when and where will the assessment be administered? Are there financial costs, or are program and or university resources available? So these are the questions. And most importantly, who is responsible to make certain the assessment is accomplished? Okay? Now this is a very important tip in selecting a method of assessment. Ideally, as you write or rewrite the student learning objectives, keep in mind the question: what method or methods can I use to assess the student learning outcome. So why is this tip potentially useful? So these are the questions that uh, we should take careful action. Now, the third factor that affects student learning outcomes in the tertiary level is student preferred learning styles. So, what is a learning style? It's the certain way a person learns best. Additionally, a learning style is the unique collection of individual skills and preferences that affect how a student perceives, gathers, and processes information. It has been recognized that each individual prefers different styles and strategies for learning. Everyone possesses a combination of different learning styles. However, some people identify that they prefer one learning style and utilize it more as compared to other styles. Others may express that they use variety of styles depending on their context. Thus, learning style is not fixed or rigid. Using multiple learning styles for the purpose of learning is a comparative novel approach. This strategy has recently been recognized by the educators. Traditional schooling follows the concept of logical and linguist methods of teaching only. Now, what are learning styles? We have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. We process information in three ways: by seeing, hearing, and doing. So our preferred learning style is the one you use the most: visual learners, auditory learners, and tactile learners. Visual learners prefer to see information such as graphics, charts, and PowerPoints. They visualize what they hear, and they can become distracted in lectures when visual aids are not used. Visual learners may benefit from visiting textbook, online companion sites, bringing PowerPoint presentations to class, and taking notes alongside with them. Another is reading the chapter ahead of time and taking notes while reading, taking notes during class and revising them as soon as possible after class, color coding main ideas and subtopics, and others. While auditory learners prefer to hear information out loud. They prefer lecture style classes, and they may not need extensive notes. They may read aloud. So those are the characteristics of of an auditory learners. Auditory learners may benefit from lecture style class, study groups in order to hear others discuss concepts, taping lectures and listening to them after class, reading aloud. So those are the characteristics of an auditory learners. Now we go to tactile or kinesthetic learners. Kinesthetic learners prefer to take interactive classes, learn through experience and physical activity. Tactile or kinesthetic learners benefit from creating charts, diagrams, and graphs, taking notes, making flashcards, transcribing handwritten notes onto the computer, completing practice problems when applicable, and participating in demonstrations such as group presentations. So, we will now apply the preferred learning style to lecture classes. First, visual and tactile learners should take detailed notes during a lecture. Tactile learners may also benefit from rewriting, typing notes, or making flashcards, while auditory learners who prefer lecture classes should work on strengthening their visual and tactile skills by taking notes. Now, applying the preferred learning style to visual presentations. Tactile and auditory learners may benefit by sitting in the front of the class. They should also take notes during the presentation and soon after class make additions to class notes. While auditory learners may benefit from study groups to reinforce information that was delivered through visual presentation. Tactile learners could recreate visuals as a way to connect with new material. Now, applying the preferred learning style to labs works well for tactile learners. Visual and auditory learners can enhance their abilities by taking notes on class procedures and using lab time for additional practice. Now, as conclusion to the different learning styles or different learners, I should say, so we have this. Build your skills across the learning styles. Maximize your learning style. Practice skills that do not come easily to you. Try new things and new ways to learn. And use multiple modalities to enhance learning. These are my references. Thank you. Sukran and wassalam.